Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I am Sarah Cain, better known as the Crusader Gal, and today I'm joined by two special guests. I've got Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman here with me. They are the producers of God's Not Dead, Unplanned, some pretty big name movies that you're probably familiar with, but more recently, the movie Nefarious, which is out in theaters. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you for having us on.
Oh, it's great to have you. I'm so glad that you could join me. I did watch the movie, just obviously, I suppose, but I really enjoyed it, and in part because I was a little bit concerned, just because I know that you produced movies like God's Not Dead, so you produced a sort of obviously Christian movie, and while it was a really good Christian movie, you kind of think you expect a certain thing from a Christian movie, right? You just do, and this movie wasn't that at all. And it certainly wasn't the more generic, the Hallmark Christian movie either, which are kind of infamous, And even, as a Catholic, as a Christian, I still kind of cringe at most Christian movies out there, and this just didn't have that vibe. So thank you for that. First of all, would you go ahead and give us a bit of a synopsis about what Nefarious is about?
Sure.
Sure. The setup for the story is that there's a condemned serial killer. It's the date scheduled for his execution, but his previous prison psychiatrist has just committed suicide, calling all of the psychiatrist's recent findings into question. Well, the state cannot execute you unless you're found to be sane. They don't execute insane people. They only execute theoretically sane people. So the court appoints a new psychiatrist to go in and do sort of an 11th hour evaluation of mental fitness. The warden of the prison warns this new shrink. He says, basically, this guy is going to get inside your head. He's going to twist it around. He doesn't want to be killed. He's going to lie to you. And if you listen to him, you'll think you're the killer by the time he's done rather than him. The shrink kind of shrugs that off. He goes in, he sits down opposite the condemned, and the condemned starts revealing surprise after surprise. First, he knows everything about the psychiatrist's life. Secondly, he says, I want to be executed. I'm actually a demon in possession of a human being. And thirdly, I know you don't believe anything I'm telling you, but before you leave here today, you will have committed 3 murders of your own. And the shrink dismisses all of that, and the rest of the movie is about watching how that plays out.
Thank you. I would guess it's kind of a thriller is where I would place it, because it kind of has this dark, it has the suspense, but it's not like a jump scare horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yes, psychological thriller, I would say, is the best way. It's got horror undertones, but it's really a psychological thriller. It's kind of the mature version of Screwtape Letters meets Silence of the Lambs.
Well, I think that one of the problems that certain faith-filled people or even secular people, they look at the poster and they say, oh, I'm not going to that. That's one of them demonic, satanic movies. We actually did that for a reason. Most people don't realize that, but now they do, since I'm telling you, right? But we did it to lure in non-believers.
The poster's a Trojan horse.
It's a Trojan horse. And so we know that...
You just want to pull in random horror people instead of just attracting the sort of Christian right.
Right,
Exactly.
who have no faith grounding whatsoever, but are, they're in love with these horrific, demonic movies where, quite honestly, I think they're out of their mind because they're going to get infested and so on, but that's another story. Sure. But the bottom line is, so they go through this whole process. We did that for a very specific reason. But
our poster artist, just so you get, the guy who did our poster is the guy who did the poster for The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, wow.
So this is among other things. He also did our poster for Unplanned. So he's really
good,
cool.
But he's also a believer, and he's a faithful Catholic.
Right.
So we use the poster to bring people in like a Trojan horse, like I said. But and we also got an R rating. And the R rating really is a political R. Hollywood gave us the R because they know Christians will not come to see it. And that's the whole point of why they tried to crush the movie.
Right, because I don't see... There's no profanity, there's no nudity in that. Nothing of that.
There's nothing demonic, nothing satanic, no nudity, no profanity, no sex. I mean, and basically, it's a punishment. This is what we deal with. We dealt with this.
Should have been a PG-13 and not even that hard of a PG-13.
Right.
And so we try to explain that to the audience. But what we can say is, look, it's not your typical demonic, satanic, over the top, people walking across the wall, spitting green soup and their heads turning around. It's none of that.
There's
Well,
no
It's
there's
that
no
was one of the things
spectacle.
I really liked about the movie was that the possession angle was believable, right? It
right,
wasn't just like this is this Hollywood thing where it's all about special effects and everyone just kind of tunes out and laughs it off when the movie's over. It was actually
right.
a sort of possession that lines up with what actual exorcists say and describe, and which doesn't sort of like make you disbelieve and throw you into, oh, this is just obviously a movie, because you can't just throw it away when the movie's over, because it seems like something that could and does actually happen.
Well, Father Carlos Martins, who is the premier exorcist in the United States, basically saw the movie. He's our biggest champion. And basically what he said was that this movie, his words, this movie is the best movie on
The
exorcism
most realistic portrayal of
ever.
the demonic.
I was going to
ever.
ask you if
Said
you've had any exorcists who watched it.
Yeah, I mean, and he has basically said it's the best movie on exorcism ever, that's been ever made, and this is what I deal with. His words, this is what I deal with every day. This is a realistic portrayal of what he deals with, and so that might scare people, but they shouldn't be scared, because the bottom line is what we're doing is we're dragging the devil out of the darkness into the light. So it should give people power to understand they're being manipulated, they're being misused.
Well, what's interesting about this entire conversation is that I'm a Catholic convert, but I've noticed that when speaking with other Catholics, that a lot of them just don't believe that exorcists even exist, which is sort of mind-boggling. But they don't believe or know, I should say, that even exorcists exist. That they're part of the church and everything like that. They just are so sort of divorced from it because they're so immersed in like the sort of secular version of what our faith should be.
Well,
mm-hmm.
I think if you ask Father Martins if he existed, he would tell you yes, and he is an exorcist. So, and we had an exorcist on set. One of the problems is that when you declare war against the devil, he fights back. And so we had all these profoundly affecting things.
Our exorcist trained priest who was on set and was staying with us had an emergency appendectomy during shooting, and his appendix burst during removal.
We had the roof to the building where we were making the movie ripped off. We had car crashes. We had everything you could possibly imagine.
I've been to a spiritual warfare conference. I don't know, an hour and a half away from where I live, at a different parish. And the description, I'm just filling this in for viewers and stuff. What you often find are interruptions in the event actually taking place that aren't really explained, especially when you line them up, just the probability of so many different things going wrong. And so that's what they described in the conference that I went to, and that's kind of similar to what you're describing. You had a lot of different things just kind of happen to try and prevent you from
Yes, they're still.
Well, let me tell you one thing. So we had Father Carlos, on the day before our premiere, we do a press junket for a couple of days ahead of time where people are interviewed and so on, Sean Patrick Flannery, the stars, us, and so on. And all the press comes in and they do their interviews and stuff. And one of the things is that, so we're filming it. All of a sudden, the room lights start flickering, which makes it impossible to film.
Right.
The sound mixer dies. The two cameras that we're using to shoot the discs that we're taping everything on get corrupted. So we call Father Martins. He comes back to the room and he says, I know what this is. Walks across the room, 5 floors up, puts his back to the window, and basically takes out his book and starts doing in Latin an exorcism in the room.
Rite of exorcism for place in Latin.
And basically he's going through it, and then suddenly, now remember, behind him is a window and 5 floors down. There's no balcony, there's nothing like that. And all of a sudden a woman is chanting demonic phrases in his ear. But he keeps going because they're trying to distract him and stop the prayer, obviously. And what was the line with that?
He reaches a part,
in Latin?
He reaches a part in the right where he says, bow now before the great and terrible name of Jesus. And that's where the interference stops.
The voice disappears.
And does not begin again.
The lights stop flickering, okay? Everything works. Now, you explain that. I mean, along with 20,000 others. We've had people get sick. We pray over them. They're better. We have people come nearly to death. We had 8 car accidents in 11 days shooting the movie.
You had 8 car accidents in 11 days?
8 car accidents in 11 days. And the problem, and the cars were totaled. But here's how the Lord works. The devil attacks, the Lord protects. Not one person got a scratch. And the cars were totaled.
Okay.
So it's amazing. And so every email, every cell phone. I mean, we did an article with Newsweek.
Our interview with Newsweek had to be taken 3 times. The first 2 were by audio. When neither of those worked, they asked us to do it in writing, and we couldn't send the email. It took us 20 minutes to send an email.
Crazy.
After the email was completed.
And we were in a diner, and I'm sending emails like a wild dog. I mean, everywhere. He can send other emails, but we can't send this email. And I said to him,
my computer just freezes up.
I said to him, let's get smart. So we did we prayed to the Lord, and we asked for the Holy Spirit and the Blessed Mother and Saint Michael, and suddenly, there it goes. We sent it, and he got it, and they were able to print it. But this is a battle. You know,
Steve Dace, the author of the book Nefarious Plot that inspired the movie, the day before the premiere, the day before our theatrical release, he starts off with a pimple under his arm in the morning. By nightfall, he's incoherent in an ER, and he's got a live MRSA infection
and he almost dies
through his body, and he almost dies.
But this has been a constant thing. In other words, this far and no farther. In other words, the Lord is with us, but he tells us he's going to protect us when we do these kinds of movies. Same thing in Unplanned.
Yeah.
He told us very specifically, I need you to put on your armor.
The difference with Unplanned,
I want you to do this for me.
The difference with Unplanned, though, was that during production, we had a hedge of protection around us. We had absolutely no troubles during production. Our troubles started after we were done with the film.
When you were trying to get it in theaters and everything like that?
Yes, and internationally and all that. With this particular picture right from the get-go, I mean, our first attempt at shooting, we were 10 days from shooting, and of our 15 key personnel, 9 went down with COVID. Carrie was in the hospital for 8 days.
And you know, I had the greatest peace on me. I actually had an 8-day vacation because the Lord was speaking to me. It was amazing. It was amazing. He told me what was going to happen and everything, and I was just profoundly affected. You know, one of the things that also happened, which is when we were filming the scenes, we were in the convention center in Oklahoma, and so it's all girders because it's a basketball court, basically.
What used to be a professional basketball arena.
For the NBA Thunder. And so what happens is we're shooting a part, and we're talking about the devil, and I am not kidding. The whole building, this is a 250,000 square foot building.
Oh, it's a 1.25 million square foot facility.
Okay, overall. And
It's
the bottom
enormous.
line is the building, the girders start bending and
Groaning.
and groaning, and it sounded like we were in the bowels of hell. Now I want you to imagine,
Like the building was in pain.
and that's every time we're shooting the scene about the devil. We stop shooting the scene of the devil, it stops. We do it again, it starts.
Well, that must have been
And
unnerving.
it was atheists and secular people that were in the area, and it all looked up, and this is to me confounding. You're an atheist. You're not supposed to believe in any of this, right? And they say, it sounds like we're in hell. And they were all freaked out.
Yeah.
We were told it highest sustained winds in the state of Oklahoma's history. Now we're talking about Oklahoma, where, like the song says, the wind comes sweeping down the plain. So we had 70 mile an hour sustained winds that were gusting.
Just
up.
everything. But you know, this is what makes the movie what it is. I believe that the movie is a light into the darkness. It pierces the darkness and reveals the devil's machinations.
Well,
it's true.
I agree. But let me tell you what I like about the movie. It doesn't take the typical Christian movie approach of trying to prove the existence of God, but instead the existence of the devil. And that's kind of fascinating in its approach. I think that we sort of live in a society that doesn't take evil seriously, and as a result doesn't take God seriously because you don't need a savior if there is no evil. I presume that was your intent?
Well, I will say this. We didn't make this as a Christian movie.
Right.
We did what C.S. Lewis says. We're Christians who made a movie. It's different than making a Christian movie. Okay, so we want to tell the real tale of the devil. Now, a lot of people are labeling it Christian because that's how they tear it down, right? Because Christian movies are inherently usually bad.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is we're learning how to do it. People are learning how to do it. You know, one of the things that we feel that we did with God's Not Dead is we elevated the game. You know, all of a sudden people had something to aspire. They saw it, right? Same thing with Unplanned and so on and so forth. But what we're saying is we're believers. We're devout Catholics who basically consecrate our movies to the Lord and to the Virgin. And we do everything. We have a priest on every movie. Okay, on set. We pay for that. It's a line item in the budget, okay? We do mass and adoration and confession every day. We're praying. We got our rosaries. We do that. Not easy always, because one hand you're shooting a movie, the other hand you're praying beads. But the bottom line is that we do it. We're very, very serious about this. But we don't start off and say, we're going to make a movie, a Christian movie. No, that's not what we do.
Right.
We make a great movie, but we happen to have, we're Catholics, so our morality comes into the movie, because what we showed in that movie is truth. That's what we showed. And that's why haters are reacting so crazily, and why faithful people are reacting at 97, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's insane. We have the biggest disconnect on Rotten Tomatoes between critics and the audience history. So we float 97 to 98% with the audience. We float in the 20s, between 23 and 30% with the critics, and that's an amazing disconnect.
It is. It really is. Do you think, is it fair to say that the movie is somewhat of a metaphor, in that the psychiatrist that you have there sort of represents the world in his adherence to science and the sort of like popular culture? Is that fair?
That's exactly
what he is. And he also, it works well that he enters, by virtue of his unbelief and in relying on his intelligence, he enters this battle completely unprepared for what he's facing. And what the character's always been able to rely on is his raw intelligence. He's just a brilliant guy. But if you match your intelligence against demonic, diabolical intelligence, that's out of your weight class. You're just not going to do very well.
I think it's very realistic too. I mean, he represents mankind, really. I know everything. I don't need God. I don't need anything. And all of a sudden, wham, he runs into evil.
And he represents.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and you even have this priest there that originally was called upon as being the chaplain, right? So he's a chaplain, so we don't know what denomination he is. He's just random chaplain. And suddenly he becomes identified as a priest, and then the guy who's demonically possessed, he's nervous, right? He's scared, and then suddenly when he realizes is this sort of like modernist priest who doesn't really believe in evil or demons or anything, the demonic possessed guy, he's just relaxed. There's no longer anything for him to fear.
Well, there's the Latin rite and the Novus Ordo rite and the suburban rite, and he's the priest of the suburban rite. So
we're not fond of that kind of situation. Yeah. So, but we wanted to show. Unfortunately, that's where the church is.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, look,
it doesn't help to deny the state that things are in. We have to first acknowledge the problem before we can fix them.
And we're not going to deny that this is a situation in the church, obviously. But there are a lot of good priests, nuns, deacons, and so on and so forth. A lot of faithful Catholics and Christians. Yep. But we thought it was important to show this. By the way, a little Easter egg. I don't know if your people will find it, but when Sean Patrick Flannery stands up and screams, he's retreating in the table because he's scared. If you look very carefully, he's got hairs that stand out like horns.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
And when the priest is there, he's scared, so the horns are up and out. They're not horns, they're hair, right? Yeah. But when he finds out the priest is a poser, a progressive, kumbaya and all that stuff, the horns come down. Like, in other words, I got nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Right. And to the same degree that the priest's impotence or unbelief is comforting to the demon, that the atheism of the psychologist is similarly comforting to the demon, because it's like this person doesn't know what he's dealing with. And I think that in our culture, it's like so many don't know what we're dealing with because they think we're dealing with political battles, and we're not. We're dealing with spiritual battles, and we have like a culture that's just sort of dying and doesn't realize that it used to rest on a foundation of Christendom, and like with that being evaporated in modern culture increasingly over time, we're lacking that foundation, and so we're just losing the spiritual battle because there's nothing on which we stand.
That's exactly right. A lot of the purpose of the movie is for the scales to fall from believers' eyes and realize we're not in a cultural battle, we're in a spiritual battle. That's what this thing is.
I mean, really, if you look at it from the beginning of time, what was it really all about? It was about God and the devil, good and evil.
Right.
Okay. And Jesus came, like we point out in the movie, when the devil, which I think is amazing sequence, Must say so ourselves. I'm going to try and remain humble because the Lord.
Yeah, humble brag.
But when we say the cross was our greatest mistake, Jesus, right? I mean, it's just so brilliant if you look at the story of Christ and creation and all this. I mean, as a true believer, this amplifies, and I want your listeners to realize, we're not here to scare you. We're not doing jump scares and like a head spinning. This is a simple
It's a conversation.
movie.
But what it is it's like a real exorcism in terms of the devil, the demon in this piece, for reasons of his own, is deciding to tell the truth for a large part, from his point of view.
For his advantage.
For large parts of this story. So we get a glimpse at the way this works. In a weird way, I'll compare it to what happened with The Godfather. When The Godfather came out, American society, American culture was only a few years away from first learning about how the mafia was working. It had been a complete mystery, complete secret. And then in the 60s, they had their first person who entered witness protection, the first time the secrets were revealed. So we were only a little way away from first hearing about how the mafia worked and how the mob worked. We don't really know a lot about how the diabolical works in our culture today. So this is a glimpse at that. And that's why I think it's fascinating for a lot of people. They're seeing a system that they're not familiar with.
And the timing is perfect, because I would ask all your listeners or viewers to, when they step out of their house in the morning and they're in their car or they're going to the store or whatever, you've got to admit there's something different in the world right now, in the air, in everything. There's something wrong. There's something off, and it's darkness. It's either the devil is no longer hiding; he's come fully out.
Oh, that brings me to that's kind of like okay. So in the movie, I'm not going to give away too much of the movie, but there was one point that I really liked, was when the demon's talking to the psychiatrist, and he says, "You don't see evil. You've lost the ability to see evil." That was awesome, and it's theological, right? Because we're taught sin clouds our vision, clouds our minds, and so when you have these people who are engaged in perpetual sin or perpetual evil, you might say, they sort of lose the ability to clearly understand the world around them and even understand more what we ought to consider to be basic concepts. And I think that you can kind of see that in modern cultural conversations, where it's like you can't even have a conversation with the person because they just don't even see reality as it is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're still facing the same adversary we've faced for all of time, but we've lost most of the defenses against that. When we don't embrace the weapons that are provided by the faith, when we walk away from the sacraments, when we walk away from reconciliation, when we stop confessing sin and repenting, and we start embracing it and celebrating it, well, we're at very much of a disadvantage in this battle.
You tackled some of the heaviest issues of our day in the movie. You tackled euthanasia, you tackled abortion. I'm sure you didn't do that without careful thought. Why did you decide to take those head on?
Well, we wanted to piss off everyone else who didn't like us.
Yeah, we were concerned,
after we did Unplanned.
We were concerned there might be 3 progressives in the country that didn't already hate our guts, and so we said we've got to get rid of the other 3.
Yeah, we did it. So that's it. No, what we did was, I think euthanasia is coming on a mass scale. It's already in Canada. It's going to be all over the world very soon.
Yep.
And I think it's one of those sins that, where you just get rid of your parents and you inherit everything, right? But I think it's one of those sins that is almost like a silent sin. It's like no one really thinks about it and knows about it. Oh, I just got rid of my parents and I move on, kind of thing, right?
Right.
And deep down inside, I think we wanted to show people,
It's a sin
that's murder.
It's a sin of misplaced mercy, and it's a real.
And it's a manipulation by the devil. Abortion obviously is a more outward sin,
right.
But we believe strongly that, we just believe that America cannot be saved unless it stops abortion, and the world cannot be saved. The Lord will not tolerate. God, our good God, will not tolerate the murder of his children, his most precious, most wonderful thing that has ever created, his children. And look what they're doing to the children now. I defy anyone to say this is not evil. It's evil on every single level, not only abortion, but
the mutilations that come later.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The idea that you can abort a child after it's born is, we are praying to Moloch. The scenes in this movie really represent, and the reason we did that, it shows what's going on in the world. So we very specifically targeted every single word. And I will tell you one thing so your listeners know. Chuck and I are from New Jersey. We can't write dialogue like this, okay? That guys from Jersey don't write dialogue. This was the Holy Spirit. And so we just said yes.
Princeton is probably excluded, but we didn't go there.
Fair enough. Do you think that the movie sort of, it approached the topic of incrementalism as it pertains to evil in daily life? And this is, I think, an important topic because, and I've said this to my audience tons of times, but nobody ever wakes up one day and decides to be a villain. And I don't think that any of the villains, including the major ones throughout the 20th century, ever said to themselves, I'm the villain, I'm going to be the villain. They rationalize their way through a bunch of really evil decisions. And progressively, you know, when we can step back and say, well, it wasn't us, so we're looking at them, we can see just how diabolical some of those decisions were. But individuals, they don't see it. You know, you just make one little approach after another, and unless you're willing to sort of look at an objective standard of what evil is and where it comes from, you're not going to see it in your own life. And you kind of like, you really, through using somebody else, through using the psychologist, you really kind of showed how that happens, and I thought it was amazingly done. I really do.
It's a triumph of relativism. You know, once you abandon all objective standards of what's right and wrong, you know, what do we hear ironically gets reinforced in most movies, most novels, whatever? Just follow your heart. To borrow from
Just do what you want.
To borrow from Tim Keller, the Presbyterian minister, isn't that what serial killers do? Don't they follow their heart?
Right.
So,
well, one of the things is that you know, in our modern society, that the best thing is if you can just be as passionate as possible, just passion. And it's like, well, okay, but passionate towards what? You know, I'm often saying, like, the 20th century would have been way better if Stalin was just a little bit less passionate. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't really matter what you're passionate about, as look, you know, if you're not going in the right direction. Because ultimately, that's kind of important. You know, otherwise you're just kind of dragging us all the wrong way.
The world might have been a much simpler place if Adolf Hitler had been accepted to art school. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's a little less passion in the wrong direction. Yeah. So, yeah, completely.
Well, that's how the devil works, too. I mean, he slowly, step by step, corrupts. And multiple times in the movie, we show it. You know, he tells him, you're going to commit 3 murders. He doesn't realize it, and he says that's not going to happen. But it happens, right? Slowly but surely. And in the end, the final murder, without giving away too much, obviously I'm giving away too much, but he voluntarily puts the man to death. And he knows that this guy is innocent, that he's actually...
But before that, what you find is they can't agree on the definition of murder. But the demonic has a different definition than we sometimes do. You know, so that's the... And... It's just a different standard.
We can't agree on a definition of murder, right? That's why we don't use the word murder. That's why when you're talking about abortion and when you're talking about euthanasia, we don't use the word murder because we don't want to agree on the definition. You know?
Well, we don't agree because we know that it's murder. So that one of the best parts of the movie is he comes back in and he says, I want to know why, how you knew my girlfriend was going to get an elective termination. And the demon laughs at him and says, elective, okay, whatever. In other words, you're just so perfect. You're just so perfect. You are fulfilling our agenda. Right. And I think it's powerful to note that, you know, that's the way, and most people justify everything they do. Yes. I mean, look, we're guilty of it. Everybody's guilty of it.
Sure.
To a certain extent. It's only when you get Christ and that you start to move closer to God, then you start saying, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I'm going to go to confession. I'm going to straighten my life out. I'm going to be more, I'm going to pray more, you know, and that kind of, and the closer we get, the less we do that. But, you know, not everyone is a traditional diehard faithful Catholic. So, you know, would that it were so.
Not everyone, really?
Yeah.
Well, our souls are being contested for, ultimately. And I think the movie kind of reminds you of that. Just something that you know, it's easy to sort of try and put that out of mind. And if you sort of follow the modern culture's push to put that out of mind, you end up in this incremental path that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's really what the movie's about. It's a battle for one soul that takes place in 90 minutes in real time, mostly over a table.
Yeah, and
that's what it is.
It's not something I could just like stop thinking about after I turned off the movie. You know what I mean? It's like it feels like you've been through a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and it kind of stays with you. So it was really good in that regard. I mean, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're hearing that over and over.
You're not the only one.
No.
If we, and by we I mean those who are conservative and those who are Christian of any stripe, are going to take the culture back, I think that there needs to be an encouragement of the production of art and movies and books and so on in order to create a sort of parallel culture, because you can't immerse yourself in the crap that's coming out, you know, from the secular world and expect that we're going to be able to have anything that stands to call itself a culture. I mean, that's absurd. And really, I don't think there is such a thing as a secular culture, really. You just have very different gods that are undeclared. And that's really what you have going on right now. I'm over that. I think one of the best examples of that is how, like, everybody cringes at the idea of a blasphemy law in the modern age, but those on the political left want blasphemy laws in the form of hate speech prohibitions, right? They want to prohibit certain types of speech to protect what are basically their gods. And so that's what I mean when I say there's no secular state, because there just isn't. There is no secular culture. There can't be, because man is inherently a religious creature. And so that's why we end up just propping up different stuff to fill our own vacuums that we create through our own denial. Have you, since you released the movie, and it is still early days, but have you had issues with canceling within theaters, struggles getting into theaters?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, a combination of, well, look, there's a demonic host, there's a demonic army that is out there in every theater, in every place we go. We had, for example, fire alarms would go off in the theaters and for no reason whatsoever all across the country in the third act.
One showing of 500 people that Steve Dace, the author, was supposed to be at, but he couldn't go because of his hospitalization that we talked about. They couldn't figure out what was wrong, and they found there was a lens cap over the
Somebody
projector.
put a lens. They never do.
Nobody puts a lens cap on a station.
That's like from 1940. You know, I mean, come on, it doesn't happen. You know, there was one theater chain that basically in 17 states, all their machines went down, and basically they couldn't sell tickets to Nefarious.
Shows were showing as being completely sold out, and yet they weren't.
They were empty. Or basically they'll let you go into the theater for free if you go to this movie. I mean, it's just all this crazy, insane stuff.
We faced a lot of this with Unplanned.
You know, we had the same thing on Unplanned. Look, the devil is good at what he does, but he does not like being dragged into the light. He doesn't want people to realize. But I think that the Lord is going to do a mighty work here. And I don't think it, I believe it. I have full confidence that he's going to use this the way he wants to use it.
How can people help with the theater issues?
I think that basically this coming weekend is very, 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 very important for us.
Why is that?
Because if we do not do good this weekend, if we do not do better than we did last weekend, that gives them an excuse to cut our screens.
We'll be swept away.
Okay.
And we'll be swept away.
We're up against $75 million of horror film advertising with 3 other horror films.
And we don't have that money. We don't have that budget. We have practically nothing. And so the bottom line is that, and also, by the way, this movie per screen average was higher. Let me give you an example of what we're up against. Renfield, had a per screen average of $900.
$100,000.
Under $1,000. We had like almost $1,500. So we're way better than them.
Right.
They upped their screens to 3,375 screens and yet lowered our screens to 750. So, you got to realize that there is a battle going on.
We don't get a fair hearing, so we've really got to try to overperform in order to stay. Otherwise, in the Battle of David and Goliath, they take away our sling.
I think even better is I see that you have Joan of Arc, or at least I presume this is Joan of Arc. We're Joan of Arc. You know, we're accused, maligned, arrested, tormented, and yet we're trying to fight the battle, right? We're trying to do it. If people don't come and stand up, if they don't vote by coming to the movie, if they don't spread the word, everyone says, like you said before, we need more of this. Well, it's just not going to appear on its own. If somebody's got tremendous amounts of money out there, I would urge them, Reach out to us. Look, what I could do with
Buy
50
some
or $100 million.
Buy
Are you
some
kidding?
tickets for a youth group. Do something.
Do something. Pray. Go to
If
the
you're
movie.
broke, say a rosary.
Yeah, I
okay?
mean, the problem is we're fighting the good fight, but
Are you in theaters throughout the United States at the moment?
we're in theaters throughout the United States, but in a lot of places.
Not Canada. Canada won't let us in.
But we're going to get in there too. We're going to sneak into Canada. So, you're Canadians that are listening. We're coming.
Good for you. Well, I certainly urge all my audience members to go and see it. It really is a genuinely good movie. Have you two had issues with canceling within Hollywood?
We've been canceled for 5 years.
We have no support on any level from Hollywood.
What's that like?
I want you to picture an island about 20 feet wide and 20 feet long. And then me and Chuck are on that island. And that's where we live and make our movies. You have to understand, by the way, Hollywood is the belly of the beast.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Gosh.
Okay, on Unplanned, let me give you the 2 states of the world. Planned Parenthood has a permanent on-site representative in Hollywood to give lectures on how to do pro-abortion programming. She does it at Karen Spruik. She does it at the agency. She does it for writers. They sponsor a luncheon every year at the Sundance Film
Unlimited
Festival.
money, unlimited funding, does whatever they want.
We can't even buy advertising. It was so bad on Unplanned that we were invited to testify before a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on suppression of conservative thought.
Went to the White House twice because of it. Okay, I mean,
Was
let's
that the
be
Trump
serious.
White House?
Yeah, but yes, and we loved it. But the bottom line is, what I will tell you straight off the bat is, however, is that every force of evil, and that's most of the world, the media, we immediately get zeros. No matter what movie we put out, we could put out The Godfather, Gone with the Wind, whatever. This is hate-filled. This is this.
People who don't see the movie go on the site to give us ones and zeros.
And they've never seen the movie.
Which is why you got the R rating.
So, or any other thing. It's an extreme battle that we're dealing. Hollywood, what people need to know, and I think a lot of Christians at this point, Catholics, Christians, everyone, know that Hollywood is not their friend. But what they don't know is that Hollywood is aggressively trying to destroy not only the youth, not only the children, not only America, but God. And that's what this really
belief in Christianity. They don't want it.
And they just believe that the sooner they do it, the world will be free. And the devil laughs.
They view Christianity as a primitive superstition and that man will not achieve his full potential until we divorce ourselves from these primitive beliefs. And that's what the programming actively does.
And by the way, out of every movie we've done, guess how many Hollywood dollars we've been given? Not one.
Well, the thing is, you've got these Planned Parenthood representatives who are providing funding of sorts for these different. I mean, that's the American taxpayer, because American tax money is going to Planned Parenthood, and so you kind of have this evil cycle that you have wherever Planned Parenthood shows up, because they're funded by the taxpayer against the will of most taxpayers who do not want their taxes to go to that, and then they fund Democrat and leftist causes and of course programming in multiple senses. It's really dark what's going on. Well, I do thank you both for your work on this. It is a very good movie. I hope people go out and see it. That's Nefarious. Would it be okay if I were to put the trailer at the end of this interview?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Now, I got to let you know, everyone who's listening, when you look at the trailer, it's going to freak you out, especially as a Catholic. And the bottom line is the trailer is designed, again, to get non-believers into the theater because they love the demonic and the satanic. What we did is we cut the trailer in such a way as to make it
to appeal to a horror audience.
To a horror audience, so we get them in the room and then we give them a right hook, left hook.
As one reviewer who's a total sold-out believer for Christ said, because he was at our premiere, he said, this is the equivalent of a theological drive-by shooting. In a good way. In other words, the audience...
And we're okay with that. We're okay with that.
They sit down in the chair, and what they don't realize is they're about to hear a bunch of scripture, ironically. They're about more than probably any other movie we've been in. It's just coming out of the mouth of a demon who actually believes all of it. He just doesn't like it.
But the thing is, it's not boring. I think people tend to associate theological discussion with something that's just, you're just going to sit there and you're going to be bored, like you're going to be, lectured by some random preacher. And it's just so not that.
We've had thousands and thousands and millions of people. Not one person, even the haters, said, Okay, after this one with you, I have a liberal guy who runs a podcast out of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
A liberal, diehard liberal. And he called us and he said, I'd like to do an interview. And I said, okay, it's not a problem. He said, I got to let you know. I don't necessarily agree with everything. He says, but I got to say, this is an unbelievable movie. I was riveted, and I don't even believe this stuff. You know, in other words, I got to have you on the interview show. So it's never boring. It's never just two guys talking.
It's an argument. They're grappling.
Yeah.
It's an interview with the devil.
Yeah.
It's C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters, the mature version, meets Silence of the Lambs. If you liked Jodie Foster talking to Anthony Hopkins, the best scenes in Silence of the Lambs when they were talking, that's
what this is.
Yeah.
And I promise our fellow brothers and sisters who are Catholics, I promise you, we will never betray you. The Bible says very specifically, you can judge a man by the fruit of his tree. Look at the fruit of our tree. Unplanned, God's not dead. Do you believe? God's not dead too. And so on and so forth. There is nothing in this movie for you to be scared of other than the truth.
This is the movie we've been asked for, ironically, for the last 10 years. We had so many believers say, I can't get my non-believing friend, I can't get my lapsed Catholic family member to go to a movie called God's Not Dead. They're not going to do it. You can't sound preachy.
Because you already know what to expect in broader message terms, you know, from the title. Even though God's Not Dead was actually like really well done, you still kind of know what if you zoom out far enough, you get, oh, it's a Christian movie. You don't get that with Nefarious.
You know what you're in for. They've been asking for the movie that plays as mainstream entertainment, and then afterwards, whoever sees it is going to be open to a conversation. And actually, ironically, it's that other person who's going to have the questions. You're not going to have to start the conversation. They will.
I also want to say thank you to you, because I tell you what, Crusader Girl, loved the title, by the way. That's awesome. You're not only are you sharp, not only are you pretty, not only you got a great personality. Praise be to God that you're Catholic. I mean, you're fighting the good fight. It's not an easy thing. I'm sure, you know, when you go to the Starbucks, blah, 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 everyone's, you know, on and on. But the bottom line is you're somebody that we can point to and say, you got to be like that girl.
Yep.
You remind me of your patron, I'm guessing, Joan of Arc here.
That's right.
And so, you know, I'm honored to know you, and we appreciate you interviewing us.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman. So thank you both so much. I hope we get to do this again with your next movie. And we'll go ahead and give the trailer. Thank you so much, both of you. Bye-bye.
If there is a next movie.
There'll be a next movie. Don't say that.
Hello? You should have accepted my offer, James.
Execution scheduled for 11 p.m. But he's trying to convince us he's gone insane.
And therefore incapable of being executed.
I need you to prove he's faking it.
Edward? I'm gonna ask you some questions.
I'm not Edward. I'm a demon.
Demons aren't really a thing. What happened to Edward?
We own him.
We?
He's a master manipulator. You have your head so twisted around you think you're the killer, not him.
And give me something to make me believe you. Prove to me you're a demon.
It's probably just a coincidence.
I want to talk to
The real
Edward.
Makes me do bad. I can't stop him.
I need you to see something. You got a fan. Did the same thing with all his victims.
Help me!
I'm trying to, Edward, but you have to answer my questions. You have to tell me the truth.
It won't let me!
It can go away. It can go away. Yes?
No. It's starting to happen. Can you feel it, James? Can you feel it? I think it's time we tell you exactly what it is that we'd like you to do.
If you enjoyed that video, please don't forget to like it. Also, I have other videos that you might enjoy. I have links in the description down below as to how you can support this work. So thank you so much.